Welcome to webinar number 3 in a series focusing on labor. I'm Ty Higgins with Ohio Farm Bureau. If you're struggling to attract and retain workers for your farm operation, your situation is not unlike many in farming today. Finding quality employees is challenging, but have you ever considered using the H2-A program to help fill your farm labor needs? In this webinar, we have a few experts on the topic that'll help you understand the benefits and the ins and outs of the H2A program. It's all part of a new collection of labor resources created by Ohio Farm Bureau and nationwide to help farmers position their business to better attract, hire, and retain farm employees. It's all part of a suite of resources for Ohio Farm Bureau members, including a labor intelligence report titled Farm Employees, Where Are They? Strategies and Solutions for Your Farm. That's open to anybody online at ohiofarmbureau.org, and then exclusively for Ohio Farm Bureau members, a guide to finding, hiring, and retaining farm employees. Today's webinar, all about the H2A program. We'll have a Q&A later on this hour, so make sure if you have questions as the conversation continues to put those in the chat box. We'll get to those near the end of today's webinar. Introducing our panelists from Pike County, from Way Farms, Cameron and Mandy Way, and also from Great Lakes Ag Labor Services, Sarah Black and Laura Hurrigers. Welcome all to the webinar. Really appreciate you taking time. I know, especially for the Ways, they're in the midst of harvest season, so even 30 minutes in the middle of a day is a tall task and a big ask from us to you. So appreciate you taking time to be here with us. And Cameron and Mandy, I want to start with you to kind of tell us just about the farm and how things are going so far this harvest season.
Right now, things are going pretty good. I mean, we're starting to wrap up the season. We've had a couple light frosts. So we grow mainly produce. We do about 65 acres of fresh produce, with the bulk of it being sweet corn. Then the rest of it we grow pretty much anything from A to Z, from asparagus to zucchini. And then we grow maybe 50, 60 acres of row crops.
So far, so good. I know you're in the middle of the bean field right now. So
yeah, we actually just finished up beans last night. So we're good with those. We still got corn, still plenty wet, which I think everybody in Ohio has wet corn right now. So
seems to be a common theme throughout the state for sure. Sarah Black
yes.
and Laura Hurrigers, tell us about Great Lakes Ag Labor Services. As with any great thing, it all starts at the Farm Bureau level, in this case in particular as well.
Thanks, Ty. We're super excited to continue this partnership with Ohio Farm Bureau. Great Lakes Ag Labor Services is actually an affiliate company of Michigan Farm Bureau, just neighbors to the north. And we were started by the Farm Bureau to help solve the labor challenges at the farm level for our members. So we have a rich history of being started by farmers of our organization to help solve a problem. And that's really what we focus on, customer service that can help keep our multi-generational farms in business. So we work to help provide all the necessary tools to get labor to your farm. And that's really the sole purpose of our company.
You and Laura are going to be tackling that side of this conversation about H2A. And I want to start with you two to talk about some of the strengths of the program. Can you give a couple of examples of growth opportunities for business when it comes to the H2A program?
The H2A program it's not an easy program to use. It's pretty complicated. It is expensive, and there's a lot of areas where farmers can trip up if they don't understand what's required. But I think from a standpoint of providing an opportunity for your business to grow, one of the great benefits of the H2A program is it does give you that reliable, steady, dependable labor source that you need to know that tomorrow you're going to have a crew there, whether it's planting corn or it's harvesting vegetables or whatever your business looks like. Labor is one of the key components, and to be able to take that variability out of the mix, out of the equation, to say, yep, tomorrow I know my 6 guys are going to be here, whatever it is, that gives you predictability. That also gives you then the ability to say for next year, well, now I know I have a predictable labor force. I want to get into this new entity or this new crop or this additional acreage. So it's a very good provider of stability to allow your business to plan for the next stages.
Cameron and Mandy, how do you utilize H2A workers on your farm?
So we, our first couple of years, we utilized the joint contract option, where you can legally share workers between 2 smaller operations. But we went with our own contract this year just because we know as an operation, and Sarah highlighted this, we have reliable workers. So we were able to expand some acreage and some crops, and we knew we needed 3 full-time operation workers. Now they are harvesting our crops. They are also responsible for washing and packing them. So they are from the start to finish with all of our fresh produce. They have the entire operation. We're there side by side with them, but we are mainly using them for the harvest, washing, and packing side of our farm.
And planting.
And they plant.
They do all of our transplanting, and they assist with our grain harvest and other things too. So,
Sarah, is that pretty common? What are some other uses of H2A workers on the farm?
One of the key things to remember about H2A is it's meant to be a supplement to your labor force, and it is for agricultural work that is temporary or seasonal in nature. So an H2A worker is not going to be able to come in and be a long-term, full-time, year-round the clock person. That's not what the program was designed for. So it can help farms that have that seasonal need where they need extra workers during harvest or during planting. So that's a key thing to remember, that it's meant to be a supplement to your labor force.
A lot of people watching this webinar might wonder, if they are eligible for H2A workers. And I want to talk about both the farmer side and the worker side about eligibility and requirements. So Sarah, let's start with the farm side. What are the requirements for hiring H2A workers?
Any farm really is able to think about using the H2A program if they have what I described as a seasonal or a temporary need. If you've got need for workers 10 months or less, months out of the year, and you can have jobs that are agricultural in nature, and it kind of gets into some complications with the tax code and what is agriculture. But most of our farms today, if they're growing their own products, they're packing their own products, it's stuff that they do on their operation, and it's a seasonal type job, they're eligible to try to apply through the H2A program. It's not commodity specific. I think that's a misnomer. It's not size of farm specific. It doesn't matter if you need 1 worker or you need 100 workers. It doesn't matter if you have a dairy farm or a vegetable farm or a greenhouse or you grow soybeans. If you have a temporary need and a seasonal need for labor, you can work that through the H2A program.
Mandy and Cameron, how did you get to the point of using the program? People will wonder why you aren't hiring locally, or are there kids in the neighborhood that want to work on the farm? What got you to the point where H2A wasn't just something that was out there, but a necessity for your operation?
So we started 20 years ago, and it wasn't uncommon to have at least a dozen people a month walk up to our farm and say, "Are you hiring?" That doesn't happen anymore. And we used to have some seasonal high school help around the farm. But again, if that's more of a short-term goal, they'll work for us a couple years throughout high school, then they go off to college, get married, life happens. And we were just constantly struggling to the point where Cameron and I were full-time working, 65 to 80 hours a week with only 2 high school helpers. And we were literally mentally, physically, spiritually killing ourselves to keep the farm in operation because we didn't have reliable labor. And we found out this opportunity existed for farms of all size. And I'm glad Sarah mentioned that. We always figured we were too small at being only 60, 65 acres. And the ability to do the joint contract worked for us from a financial standpoint to split costs for filing, which I know we'll get to. But we appreciated that it was available to small farms like ourselves.
The process could seem daunting. Anything through the federal government is, there are a lot of steps and maybe a lot of red tape to get through. What does that relationship with Sarah and Laura look like to get through those barriers in a more timely fashion and make sure everything's right along the way?
We can't praise Sarah and her team at Great Lakes Ag Labor Services enough. We were so nervous just because the legal aspect of the visa filing, following every procedure, when you just read it on paper, we were just like, what if we mess up? What's the ramifications and the legal aspects of this? And from start to finish, they go through that with you. There's translation services. There's all of these resources through their contracting agency to help you with that. And they literally, if you email or call, it's not even it's within the hour that they are sending you resources, or, hey, I'll look into that, but I'll get back to you. So we have found it very beneficial for this partnership. With this being only our third season utilizing H2A, we're still learning, but to have their help has been invaluable.
Sarah and Laura, where does the process start? Take us to day one of someone wanting to get involved in the H2A program.
I'll give kind of a big overview, and then Laura, please jump in if you want to add some additional flavor from your role in filing these contracts. But the first step is you have to create a job order that describes the type of work that you want to do, and you file that job order with your local state workforce agency in your state, and you have to determine whether or not there is local, willing, and available people that want to apply for that and that meet the job requirements. So that's another key part of H2A is if there's somebody that wants to apply for that position and they're qualified and they meet the requirements, you have to hire them. So that's the first step of the filing process, is what they call the 790, or the job order that you file with the state workforce agency. And then it's a series of steps after that, which is why you really want to work with somebody that knows what they're doing, because all of those steps have very specific requirements. They have very specific timeframes, documentation, et cetera, that go with each of the steps. After you determine at the local level through your state that there is not a labor force available or anybody willing to do your job, then you can start the filing process through the Department of Labor, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and then you get to, once you get through all those filing steps, you get to the point where you can actually try to find the workers and get their visas and schedule them at the consulate. It's a very complicated process that is very time specific and that has a ton of little details and steps along the way. So anybody can do it, and there are different people that you can work with. You just want to make sure you work with somebody that knows what they're doing. Laura, please.
And you mentioned some of the misconceptions, Sarah. So when someone comes into this, what are some of those common questions they might have that, Laura, you can help them get through and get the process started?
Yeah, so one of the big things is we like to tell our clients it's not if you get audited by Department of Labor, it's when you get audited by Department of Labor. So we want to make sure that they're following all the rules and regulations. They're aware of everything that they're responsible for, and they're following those with their H2A workers that they're hiring. So one of the big things is, as Sarah mentioned, the domestic recruitment. You have to give preference to any domestic worker that applies for the job and is willing and qualified for the position. So we walk all of our clients through that. We have a domestic recruitment line that if anybody, say someone comes to the Way Farm and applies for a job, they would just send them to us and we would go through the interview process with them to make sure that they're willing, able, and qualified for the position, and that the farm is following all of the legal steps that they need to make sure that they're protected in case of an audit.
Having those partners with Sarah and Laura, certainly valuable, Mandy and Cameron, when it comes to going through the H2A process. But there are going to be challenges along the way. You mentioned yourself that you're still learning about this program and how to utilize it for your farm. What are some of the common challenges you have faced there in Pike County with getting H2A workers?
I mean, the main challenge we have is, as they mentioned, they have to be ready, willing, and able to do the work and meet the terms of the contract. And we get a lot of high schoolers. Well, our contract is almost 7 months length. That's our season. And so domestic workers are just going, wow, 7 months, I have to be available for this contract. And as soon as they see that, they kind of are like, okay, I'm not going to qualify. The biggest challenge here is just most people are traveling out of our county for employment because there's higher wages. We are very rural in Appalachian. And so that they're not really even applying. This was the first year I did not have one single domestic referral. Now, the two previous seasons, I think we had 2 or 3 high schoolers, but that was it. So again, Great Lakes provided us a business card that we literally just hand to people if they have any questions about working for us through this contract, and they handle everything for us.
Let's talk about the business aspect of this, Cameron and Mandy, if we could, because you're always having to watch your bottom line. Everybody in agriculture knows the bottom line is getting thinner and thinner with every year that goes by. What are the costs associated with hiring H2A workers, and how do you mitigate and how do you manage those?
Well, I mean, you're right. They're not cheap. I mean, I think this year we're paying 17 an hour for our labor. But they are very efficient at what they do. Once they learn a job, we can, they know how to do it and do it efficiently. So, on their end, that's kudos to them. But the cost from the beginning, that would probably be Sarah and them can, it's expensive start to finish. We have to house them. We have to provide, if they have a driver's license and you have driving on your requirements, then we have to, supply them with a vehicle and then gasoline for that vehicle. So, we have house rent. So it gets very expensive.
But
Yeah.
When you look at that overall cost and their efficiency, you will quickly kick yourself for not doing this sooner. I mean, we have said it, we've been in business 20 years. We should have done this about 10 to 12 years ago. I would have saved a lot on coloring my hair from all of the times that I was just so stressed about how are we going to keep going? We can't do this by ourselves. So it is expensive, but when you look at the efficiency, the reliability, you won't stress about your workforce showing up. It really pays for itself in the long term.
Laura, you had a comment. Jump in there.
I'll just add like some specifics on the costs. So the wage for H2A workers and also any domestic workers that are doing the same jobs listed in your contract. That wage is called the adverse effect wage rate. It's determined by Department of Labor. So this year in the state of Ohio, it's $17.17 an hour. And then usually in beginning of December, Department of Labor will issue a new wage. So historically that has gone up every single year. This year at $17.17, we expect for that to increase next year. In terms of other costs, you have to provide free housing to all of your H2A and domestic workforce in that position. And then we also cover inbound transportation as well as outbound transportation. So from their hometown in Mexico or whichever country that they're traveling from, you cover that inbound transportation and you cover that outbound transportation at the end of the season. The little bit of savings that you would have is in terms of the unemployment, Social Security, and Medicaid, they don't qualify for those, so you don't have to pay those taxes.
Sarah, we've talked about the wage. We've talked about transportation and housing. Are there other legal requirements to hiring H2A workers?
There are a lot of requirements. There are a lot of requirements for the program that you have to comply with. And part of one of the things that we recommend you do is take some time on the front end to get educated about H2A. That is one of the things that Farm Bureau and Great Lakes Ag Labor does, because we want you to know going into it, here are all the different requirements. Here are the legal requirements that you need to make sure that you're prepared to handle that go along with the cost that Laura outlined. So I think, vetting whoever you think about working with from an H2A provider is really important to understand. How are you going to help me? Are you just going to file my contracts, or are you going to help me along the way with the questions that relate to all the regulations that I have to be in compliance with? So really do your homework before you sign an agreement with whoever's going to help you get your workers.
On the worker side, and I'll ask you all this, are there restrictions to what they're able to do as far as performing their duties on the farm?
I would say as the biggest thing that we have found, as long as it is listed in your contract, there's really, I won't say nothing that they can't do, but from a farmer standpoint, we have just been very lucky with that Great Lakes that we draft a contract with all their worker duties from start to finish. I mean, it is simple as make sure they have gloves and the right tools. I mean, it outlines every single aspect of their duties. And as long as it is in the contract, then it's permissible. But I'll let Laura and Sarah talk about more specifics.
You're completely correct. The only thing I would add is that you have to make sure that all of their job tasks are considered seasonal job tasks. So if you are bringing up guys and you want them to milk cows. Department of Labor doesn't consider that to be a seasonal job, and so they wouldn't be able to do that specific job task. But as long as it's considered seasonal, harvesting, planting, taking care of crops, anything like that, equipment operation, that would all be acceptable.
And I think the third layer to add to that is it a primary agricultural activity? So we all know that our farms today have gotten a lot more complicated than they were years ago, and farmers have multiple businesses. So you want to have a conversation with a lawyer if you're going to have, or somebody that knows the program, if you're going to have workers doing things that go beyond primary agriculture. If you've got a business that takes your product and then further processes it or further packs it, there's restrictions on whether the H2-A workers can do that. And when you cross over into retail, if you've got a retail farm market or a retail store at your dairy where you're selling your milk and you start to sell other people's products, then it gets complicated really fast. And again, it just goes back to make sure you understand the people that you're doing business with and that they know how to guide you through that process.
Sarah, what happens if the worker or workers can't fulfill their side of the agreement? We've talked about the contract. What happens if they can't fulfill their duties on their end?
Yeah, so there are some additional requirements. We didn't get into this, but the farmer does also have to guarantee 75% of the contract. There are act of God clauses. If there's a complete weather, event and you have a 100% crop failure, there are ways that you can, get out of the contract. Similarly, on the worker side, you do have some abilities if that worker is not doing the tasks that are put forward in the job contract, or maybe there's a health issue. There are some things on both sides of the contract that allow for that flexibility. And let's face it, they're people just like we all are. They're going to make mistakes just like we make mistakes, and so it's not foolproof and it's not perfect.
Mandy and Cameron, as people think about this, and we're helping them through a very difficult process, thanks to Sarah and Laura, making this a lot easier. But there might also be some barriers on the farmer side, as far as the cultural barriers or the language barriers, and a little bit of trepidation of bringing them to the farm. How would you visit with other farmers about those hurdles and getting past them?
Definitely, the language barrier can be a real problem. I mean, there's a lot of, we use translation apps. I'm definitely not fluent in Spanish, and they're not generally not fluent in English. So, we use a translation app, but sometimes the problems with the translation app is there's a lot of words that mean the same thing. So, so it can be confusing for them. You think that you're, telling them that, hey, this is what needs to be done. Well, they read it and they say, and then they have questions, and they have great pride. So sometimes they don't want to say that they don't understand, so, that I would say the language barrier is probably the hardest thing to get around. But, once they learn a job, they know how to do that job, and, and it doesn't take them any time to learn how to do it. So, they pick it up and they go, and, it's pretty cut and dry from there.
And I will say, from a language aspect, there has been some documents that they've needed from a personal side or on a family issue. And we've always been able to reach out to Great Lakes, and they offer us translation services, or they have done conference calls with our workers within the hour to make sure that they understand what they're signing or understand what they're going through. So there's a very personal side. And I'm glad Sarah mentioned that. They're human, and they have so much going on back home that they are our family, and we try everything we can to do to make this transition. They're leaving everything behind to provide better for their own family. So we cry every time we drop them off at the airport, and we stay in contact, Christmas cards, letters, photos of their kids. So you will get attached to them in no time.
Sarah, there's something to be said for the culture of the farm before they bring in H2-A workers. You have to have that mindset that they are people. This is very transactionary. There's no doubt about that. But the human element has to come into play at some point in order to make this thing work long term.
Yeah, they're going to be part of your team. And like Mandy said, in many cases, they're going to be part of your extended family. So I think just like you would approach your business with any other type of decision, they become part of your team and part of the plan that you have to grow your business, and quite honestly, just oftentimes to get through day to day. So I think having the right mindset about We understand that the H2A program is complicated. We want to do things right. We want to treat our workers right. We want to treat them, just like they're a member of our team and our family. Those are the farms that have huge successes with the program. And Mandy or Cameron also mentioned so many farms will tell us that they didn't realize how much product they were leaving unharvested or how much work wasn't getting done because they don't understand how efficient these workers are. And they want to do a great job. They want to come back. They want to do it right. They want Mandy and Cameron to invite them back next year. So they're fantastic people. They're hard workers. They're doing the same thing that we're doing every day, trying to provide for our families. And it really can be a fantastic relationship if you have the right mindset about it.
How do you make sure, Sarah and Laura, that you're constantly compliant? I have to imagine these laws change maybe every year. Something gets redrawn or modified in the law. How do you make sure you're above par as far as what you're doing with H2A?
So for us as a company, I think being part of Farm Bureau really is a huge benefit to any farmer out there that's thinking about jumping into this, because not only do you get the benefit of the H2A service that we're providing, but you get the benefit of being part of Farm Bureau, which has all those additional resources, whether it's legal or regulatory or advocacy and legislative. And that's what Farm Bureau does. Right? Every day, they're looking for ways to how do we fix issues at the farm level? How do we find ways to make the environment better such that agriculture can grow and your farms can grow? So I think being connected and a part of Farm Bureau through a service like this gives you all of that additional value. For us as a company, it's every day. Every day something is changing, and we're connected and trying to be that resource for Cameron and Mandy and other folks that work with us to know that Great Lakes is staying on top of it. They probably get tired of the updates that we send out saying, oh, well, yesterday Department of Labor issued a new rule on this. That's our job. That's our job, to stay up and current with the information, then try to help the grower and the farmer understand what does this mean from a practical standpoint at the farm. It's a challenge, but we're up for the challenge, and it's not easy. It makes days kind of long sometimes.
Sarah and Laura, what you do is obviously a benefit to our industry. But Cameron and Mandy, you're the farmer, right? So you're visiting with other farmers, not only across the state of Ohio, but across the country about how this program works for you. How do those conversations go? And do you have other farmers in your area that also use the program?
Yes, we do. We personally know of 2 other operations that are utilizing the H2A program. And again, like our experience, they wish they had done it sooner. So I do welcome anybody can find us on Facebook or reach out to us, or if referred by Great Lakes Ag Labor Services, we are willing to answer any questions or concerns any local farmer or across the country has about the program. Again, I think it's just so important to emphasize we are a small farm, and we were so intimidated thinking, okay, we're not going to need 100 workers. We probably need, well, we need more than the 3 that we have, but we have 3 workers, and it's a lot to manage, but it's so invaluable. So don't let the workload or the size of your farm or that expense scare you, because you will get it back in reliable workforce.
Sarah and Laura, we have time for one more question in the chat, and they want to know if they need workers for spring or summer of 2024, when's the ideal time to start the process to make sure you have those workers in place?
Laura, go ahead and tackle that one.
Okay. So if you want them we file your contract 75 days before you want the workers on your farm. So what we like to say is contact us about 100 days before you want workers. That gives us time to go through all of the rules and regulations with you, make sure you're prepared for everything, make sure your housing is up to date, and you have enough time to really soak in what you're getting yourself into. And then at that 75th day, we like to file your contract with the state. So the latest we can do is 60 days before, but again, if you can reach out to us about 100 days before, that's best. So for spring, if you want to reach out to us in November, December, we will file your contract in December for a March start date.
Laura Herregers and Sarah Black, they are with the Great Lakes Ag Labor Services, and also from Way Farms in Pike County, Cameron and Mandy Way, joining us for this very insightful conversation about the H2A program. Really appreciate you all taking part in this. Thank you for all the insights and your expertise.
Thank you for hosting it and having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
This is number 3 of 4 webinars. The next one is coming up on November 30th, the importance of culture in recruiting and retaining farm employees. Ohio farmer Mike Ruff and industry consultant Michael Hoffman will be a part of that conversation. Again, that's November 30th, and you can get registered for that webinar online now at ohiofarmbureau.org. And of course, don't forget about the Labor Intelligence Report on our website as well. That's for everybody who wants it. And then exclusively for Ohio Farm Bureau members, a guide to finding, hiring, and retaining farm employees. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Ty Higgins. We'll see you down the road.